How does the United States use electronic warfare across both air and sea operations? Often, the first aircraft sent toward a contested battlefield is not a fighter or a bomber, but a specialized electronic warfare jet designed to disrupt enemy defenses. This aircraft acts as the spearhead of the operation, moving ahead of high-value assets to weaken the enemy's radar network. But what methods does it actually use to confuse or disable hostile radar systems? One approach is known as spot jamming, where powerful electronic signals are directed at enemy radar sensors, overwhelming them with interference. Another technique involves creating deceptive electronic signatures. By generating digital echoes of the aircraft, enemy missile systems may lock on to false targets instead of the real one. There is also a more advanced tactic used by electronic warfare units. Through sophisticated signal manipulation, they can project entire formations of phantom aircraft onto an opponent's radar display. But these electronic attacks are not activated randomly. In many cases, intelligence teams spend months studying and mapping the enemy's radar networks before any mission begins. That information is then loaded into specialized targeting and jamming systems carried by these aircraft. One of the most well-known platforms for this role is the EA-18G Growler, equipped with advanced electronic warfare pods. Inside the cockpit, a dedicated officer manages these systems, controlling the jamming equipment and monitoring the electromagnetic battlefield. If you enjoy deep military technology breakdowns and strategic analysis like this, make sure to subscribe to Telly Vortex and turn on notifications so you never miss our next documentary on modern warfare. While the pilot flies the jet, the ECMO controls all jamming systems in real time. He can choose the correct jamming techniques with this ALQ-28 radar. He can use spot jamming to disable a radar like this one. Once the Growler's sensors sniff out the exact frequency of an enemy radar, it doesn't just make noise. It focuses over 10 kilowatts of raw electromagnetic power directly at it. It burns through the system's processing like a blowtorch, blinding the defense grid completely. But the Growler also can emit the phantom fleet. It doesn't just blind the enemy, it plays mind games. It catches an incoming radar pulse, scrambles the data, and fires it right back. Suddenly, the radar operator sees dozens of ghost fighter jets swarming their screen. Panic sets in. Surface-to-air missiles are fired, but they lock on to phantoms, detonating empty sky. But how does it use the bait-and-switch strategy, even if an enemy missile actually manages to lock on to a real U.S. jet? The Growler pulls a massive bait-and-switch. It perfectly mimics the targeted jet's exact speed and location to create a digital clone. Once the enemy radar locks onto this clone, the Growler slowly drags the fake signal away. The tracking system blindly chases the ghost, and the real aircraft escapes unharmed. Then there is this danger zone, or burn-through. Jamming, however, isn't magic. If a U.S. jet flies too close to the enemy radar, usually within 20 to 60 miles, the sheer power of the radar will eventually burn through the jamming and spot the plane. That's why the Growler has to maintain a perfect high-stakes geometric dance, constantly hovering right on the razor's edge of the threat zone. But what is the step-by-step strategy? The U.S. military launches the plane. Before a single fighter jet leaves the runway, the invisible war has already begun. For weeks, U.S. spy planes and satellites have been hovering just out of reach, quietly listening. They are hunting for the electronic fingerprints of Iranian radar systems, mapping exactly where they are and how they communicate. They compile all of this into a digital hit list, which gets loaded directly into the brains of the Navy's electronic attack jets, the EA-18 Growlers. Back at command, planners aren't just drawing flight paths on a map. They are navigating a deadly 3D maze. They calculate massive threat rings around every enemy missile system. Then they plot exact coordinates, safe zones in the sky where the Growlers can orbit and blast their jamming signals without getting shot down. When the strike package finally launches, it is a highly choreographed machine. You have the Growlers for electronic attack, F-35s and Super Hornets carrying the bombs, and specialized jets loaded with radar-killing missiles. Every single aircraft has a precise location, altitude, and down to the second timeline. There is no guesswork. 30 minutes to target. The Growlers reach their standoff positions 50 to 100 miles out. They unleash a massive wave of broadband noise, blanketing the enemy's early warning screens in a thick electronic fog. The goal right now isn't to hide, it's to blind the enemy's big picture view before the real raid even begins. 15 minutes out. The strike fighters push into the kill zone, and the Growlers move in to escort them. The jamming shifts from a blunt sledgehammer to a scalpel. They inject fake targets into the Iranian screens and scramble their speed and distance readings. The radar operators are drowning in signals, completely unable to tell which blips are real aircraft and which are digital ghosts. Now the enemy faces a terrifying dilemma. If an Iranian operator realizes they are being jammed and tries to crank up their radar's power to see through the noise, they paint a giant bullseye on their own back. U.S. jets instantly fire a supersonic harm missile that rides that radar beam all the way to the source. The enemy's choice is impossible. Turn off your radar and be blind, or leave it on and be destroyed. While the radars are blinded, the Growlers are also severing the enemy's vocal cords. They jam the communication networks linking the missile batteries to Central Command. Even if a rogue battery spots a U.S. jet, they can't get clearance to fire, and they can't warn their allies. The mighty air defense network dissolves into a bunch of confused, isolated outposts. Bombs away, but the danger isn't over. As the strike jets pull up to escape, they are low, slow, and highly vulnerable. The Growlers don't let up. They maintain a deafening electronic scream, keeping the enemy blind until every last aircraft has safely crossed back over the horizon. On February 28, 2026, the Growlers and the rest of the strike force showed the world exactly why America maintains one of the most powerful military forces on the planet. Using a highly advanced mix of electronic warfare and cyber operations coordinated from space to the ground, the coalition was able to inject false data directly into Iranian radar screens. Top-tier Iranian air defense systems like their homegrown Bavar and their Russian-supplied batteries were absolutely overwhelmed by this electronic assault. But to actually hunt them down, the U.S. set a brilliant trap. They launched hundreds of ABM-160 MAL miniature air-launched decoys. To a panicked Iranian radar operator staring at a chaotic screen, these tiny drones look exactly like a massive squadron of F-15s or F-16s screaming toward the capital. With the door kicked wide open, fifth-generation stealth fighters, including both U.S. and Israeli F-35s with possible F-22 Raptors, sliced through the airspace completely undetected. Ultimately, the Iranian air defense network wasn't just suppressed, it was completely dismantled, at least for the time period. Electronic warfare can also be attached to a Ford-class aircraft carrier, and this is how they used it. They said the airspace over Venezuela was impenetrable, locked down by the Russian-made S-300 anti-air system, a beast capable of swatting aircraft out of the sky from 150 miles away. But in the dark night, the myth of invincibility didn't just crack, it evaporated. The opening salvo didn't come from pilots, but from physics. The U.S. Gerald R. Ford stationed off the coast unleashed a barrage of electronic warfare so dense it didn't just jam the Venezuelan radar screens, it burned them white. The S-300 operators at Captain Manuel Rios Air Base were blind before they ever saw the missiles coming. The first kinetic strikes were surgical, from a destroyer. 2 Tomahawk cruise missiles slammed into the S-300VN radar arrays. In an instant, the eyes of the Venezuelan defense network were turned into twisted, red-hot scrap metal. But one of the most dangerous electronic warfare comes from the disc-shaped objects attached to this Black Hawk helicopter. While the Pentagon hasn't officially disclosed the specific hardware, military experts often call this a soft kill system. So, how does it actually work? To understand the weapon, you first have to look at what it did. The most likely candidate for a weapon that creates that kind of internal pressure without external sound is a high-power microwave device. It relies on something called the fray effect. The weapon, probably carried by a Chinook or a Black Hawk helicopter, fires a focus beam of pulsed microwave energy, not sound waves, that passes right through the skull. These beams are absorbed by the water in the brain tissue and the fluid in the inner ear. This energy causes a minuscule, rapid heating of the tissue, less than 1 degree. But that tiny, sudden expansion generates a pressure wave inside the skull. The consequence? The target hears a sound, clicks, buzzing, or a roar that originates inside their own head, bypassing the eardrums entirely. If the frequency is tuned to the resonance of the inner ear, it violently disrupts the body's balance, causing immediate vertigo. At higher power levels, that rapid tissue expansion can rupture capillaries, leading to the reported nosebleeds and internal trauma. There is another possibility, a weaponized infrasonic pulse emitter. Instead of a continuous beam, this device would fire high-intensity slugs of low-frequency air pressure below 20 Hz. These waves travel through the body to match the resonant frequency of internal organs like the stomach or lungs. Powerful infrasound waves can trigger a phenomenon known as cavitation, the formation of microscopic bubbles inside bodily fluids. When those bubbles collapse, they generate tiny pressure shocks that can affect surrounding tissue. For the target, the result is an intense vibration throughout the body, often causing severe nausea, dizziness, and temporary disorientation. According to several reports, this technology may have been used as a powerful force multiplier during certain special operations. Instead of facing a traditional firefight, many of the guards described in those reports were already disoriented, sick, and unable to coordinate their defense. By the time U.S. operators moved in, the opposing force was already struggling to respond effectively. This allowed a relatively small team of around 20 special operators to advance through a much larger group with minimal resistance. Situations like this highlight how modern warfare increasingly combines advanced technology with highly trained ground forces. If you enjoy deep military analysis and technology breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe to Telly Vortex and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next documentary on modern warfare.